Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I am one of your hosts, Sami here with Angela Belford, and today we are going to be continuing our pep talk series leading up to the election. If you're listening live, if you're not listening live, maybe you're binge watching or listening to these later. I'm sure there's something chaotic going on in the world, as horrible as that may sound. So take this as your pep talk for whatever. We wanted to do something a tiny bit different on this pep talk rather than a specific topic to encourage you all with. We really wanted to share a person who
A
brought
resource.
a resource. That's exactly right. Brought a
Mhm.
lot of joy, brought a lot of peace, brings a lot of just calmness and stability, I think, to the world. Probably more to American citizens in that on Instagram, she's known as America's government teacher, the one and only Sharon McMahon, which is at Sharon Says So on Instagram. She recently wrote a book called The Small and the Mighty, and Angela and I got the opportunity to go to one of her book tour events in Dallas a couple weeks ago. And golly, we're still just buzzing about it. Still so freaking excited. Oh, yes.
I feel like this is one of those episodes where it's like, okay, we would love to have Sharon on our podcast, and she has like a gazillion followers. So we're going to talk about her because we feel like she's our friend. That's what I love about Sharon is that it feels like you're just listening to one of your friends. And I am sporting her Governords. That is the community of people that follow what Sharon is talking about. We call ourselves the Governors. I say we, and I feel like I am like an outer ring. Sammy is
No.
like an inner circle. I'm like an outer ring governor. Although I did now subscribe my own self to the book club and all the things. Anyway, we're kind of fans.
We are
We're fans.
fans. I have been paying for Sharon's private book club community for every book club except the very first one. After that, I have been all in. I do like to also brag that I was following her in 2020, back when she had like only 50,000 followers, not over a million like she has now. So I do like to try to brag and throw my cool points. Like I knew Sharon before Sharon was that cool. Um, it's not really that big of a deal because I
New.
don't care. Yeah, new. New is definitely the exact term.
Yeah.
This woman on the internet, I knew her. In
Uh,
any case, there's just so much goodness from her book and from her book tour that we really wanted to unpack some of those things and really wanted to just share with you some of the wisdom and encouragement that we got from that event and that we've gotten from reading her book.
And I would like to tell our podcast listeners, I would like all of you, I'm going to say you're welcome because Sammy wanted us to record this podcast while we were driving home from Dallas. We were so excited. And we were in East Texas where you don't get cell service anyway, and East Oklahoma. And so I held her off. So we did not have to try to navigate a podcast recording, as much fun as it was to record 5-minute podcast from while I was parasailing over the Alps. You missed that episode, but we managed not to do one on a road trip. I guess we should, but we'll have to add that to our list of things to do. But I wanted to have I really wanted this to be some meaty content for everyone. So I wanted to treat it with a little bit of reverence.
That's fine. That's fair to give it the reverence that it deserves. I absolutely agree. It deserves the reverence. And you recorded a podcast from literal air. So I think a road trip would have been fine.
It would have been fun.
Angela, what is something that has really resonated with you or stuck with you since we went to that event? Some encouragement to share with people.
Well, I want to set the stage that Sammy had read the entire book before we went. And like I said, inner circle. I was more of, I had read the introduction and first chapter, and I still haven't gotten all the way through the book. And we kind of talked about on the way, like, what are we expecting from this? Because I've had a book launch tour or book launch event, not a tour. I did an event, and I've done a reading and stuff. So I was like, what are we kind of expecting? We had round trip 10 hours, and I don't think we really knew what to expect. But what I came away from it was so inspired. I was so full of hope, and that's what I want to share today is I want to share the inspiration and the hope that is America. I mean, I know we have tons of international listeners, but I am such a huge, huge patriot. I have come from a long line of military service people, and I know freedom isn't free. I'm very acutely aware of that because our family has dedicated so much of different family members to military service, which I just honor and respect at such a high level. And I know that there are so many people that are like, "Oh my gosh." The question that Sharon has gotten on a lot of podcasts and on that thing is, "This is the worst of times, right?" Like, "This is the worst of times." And she's like, "Not even close." And in the book, she tells a story about this guy that, like, in Congress at the United States level, at the Washington, D.C., there was a guy who was beat up so badly that he could not serve for 3 years. Like, this is not the worst of times, y'all. Um, it's bad. It can be bad. But she tells the truth with such inspiration and with such hope. I took some pictures of some of the quotes she had up, and one of my favorites was, "America was made great by imperfect people who rose to the moment when their moment arrived." I
Mm.
get chills. I get chills just thinking about that.
Well, and I think it's something that even before you said that, I'm a patriot, um, it's a complicated concept these days because there are people who I think have taken it too far and to an
Yep.
extreme, and there are
I am not a
people who
nationalist. I
right,
am not a nationalist.
and there are people who will take the title and the label patriot, but really and truthfully, they're being a nationalist. They think that America above all else.
Yep.
There's just a distortion of really what it's meant to be and how it's meant to honor and love while also recognizing that it is imperfect, because I think that, like you said, imperfect people rising to the moment. I think America is an imperfect nation that rises to the moment, and I think that when we try to act like America is perfect, that's when things start to go off the rails. We really have to hold tight to both. We are imperfect. We also have come so far and we have more to go.
Yep.
And if we just give up trying, then we'll never be able to get there.
Here's another, and it's a really deep drum that she beats in that, and it comes from the Constitution, the preamble of the Constitution. And she says that America at her best would be just, peaceful, good, and free.
Mm.
And it's like, I, I can't imagine that there are a lot more words that we could use to describe America. But if we could try to pursue those values and hold those values strongly, to be just, to be peaceful, to be good, and to be free, that is when America is at their best. We're not perfect. It's actually interesting because, one of the guys that wrote the preamble of the Constitution, he says, "We hoped for better things." They actually were super nervous. If you've watched Hamilton and gotten the story behind the Broadway musical Hamilton, you know that they didn't think it was gonna work. The very fact that we're almost 250 years old is, like, mind-blowing because this is just an experiment. And an experiment, as we talk about goal settings as experiments, we have variables that we need to tweak and we need to change. And there are things that we took for granted, or things that we take for granted now, just the right for women to vote, the right for women to have a checking account. These are hard fought checking account without a male signer. My mom couldn't do that when I was born. My mom could not have a checking account. We take that for granted. And it's like, we have to, like, stop and appreciate that this is all an experiment, and that means we gotta keep tweaking and keep tweaking and keep tweaking and keep tweaking to continue to become a more perfect union.
When you mentioned Hamilton, there's a line from one of the opening songs that always has, like, stuck with me in almost like a minor chord in a way that is not, like, feels it doesn't feel real fuzzy. You're just like, "Oof." The line
Yeah.
is, "And if we win our independence, is that a guarantee of freedom for our descendants, or will the blood we shed begin a cycle of endless death with no defenses?" I That really was something that they didn't know. They didn't know that this was gonna stick, and that at the time, really at the height of colonialism, things changed hands a lot. There was a lot of battle. This was not something that was permanent, and even 250 years, I think we Americans are like, "That's so long." And the rest of the world is like, "Aw, you little baby country. You're still just a baby country," because so many other countries in the world have thousands of years of histories, or at least 1,000. And so 250 is a baby country. And so I love that Sharon is so committed to the ideas and the ideals of what our country is supposed to stand on, and in a way that doesn't feel uh, outdated, to say I want to go back to what the founders of the country really built this on. It's not about this is the exact word and this is the exact what we interpret this to mean, but I think that understanding that just peaceful, good, and free is really, really, really hits home.
I
Go ahead.
I think along that lines, if we go back, because there's so many people that are like, what did the guy, what did the founders think when they wrote the Constitution?
Mhm.
And what they thought was it's a mess. Like to quote Aaron Burr from Hamilton, he says the Constitution is a mess. It's so much of a mess that the first thing they did was pass amendments to it. Right? That's the Bill of Rights. And so I think that is where that's the piece that we've got to tune into is they knew they didn't get it perfect the first time and we have to keep iterating. We have to keep moving forward. When we know better, we have to do better. We cannot hold on to this like the past is the best version of us. No, no, no. We should absolutely study the past so that we know the mistakes that have already been made so we make some new ones. We don't need to repeat the sins of history. I love one of the stickers that she had for sale was it said don't make me repeat myself, and then the quote was history. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. It is. This summer when I was in Amsterdam and I got to go visit the Anne Frank house and see the museum and get to out we went into the secret annex. And when you look at the rise of nationalism in America and you look at the rise of nationalism in Germany, it is chilling to me
Mhm.
how similar that it feels like history could repeat itself. We have to be aware of what history can teach us so that we can continue to iterate, continue to the experiment, and continue to get better.
I also to bring us down to the personal level, we can talk about this, and then I know I'm not alone in that, like, well, what can I do? I can't solve nationalism. I can't make a difference. I'm just one single person. Sharon's whole book is called The Small and the Mighty, and it is about 12 people who changed the course of American history without money, without accolades, without even being well known now and today. And yet they did what they could with what they had when the moment arose. And I think that it's something that we often can look back upon and say, wow, that one small action changed everything for me, for my family, for
Yeah.
this world. We don't often think this one small action I'm going to do could change everything. And so one of the quotes that she had was quiet lives can leave mighty echoes behind. And I
Mm,
think that wherever you are and whatever you have in front of you, one person making a difference for one person matters. Even if you
Yeah.
think it's not going to solve all of these big problems, it absolutely will. And collective effort can really add up.
I saw a meme on the internet that is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but this is what you're saying. We all watch these time travel movies, right? Like Back to the Future. I love Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. Like, can't get enough of it. And they're constantly the biggest concern is that if you go back to the past and you change one thing, then you change to a whole new timeline. And yet we don't apply that to our lives today, right? Like one little change could change the future trajectory of your life. And it's like we have to have that, keep the end in mind, uh, kind of in the right focus. Like we can't spend too much time on the future. You can't change the past. You really can only solve for today. Like the only actual experiment that we have is the present. And so what if you could like tweak the space time continuum for the future you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think about this. This is a real deep cut. If anybody watches Loki and they have the TVA and the master timeline, I'll keep this brief. I love to think about like, oop, I made that decision, just changed, added another timeline. Oop, made that decision, broke off into another timeline. And then I will sometimes wonder, I wonder how the Sammy in that other timeline who made the different decision, I wonder how she's doing. Um, Alas, whatever, we'll move on from
If real
sci-fi.
life were a Marvel comic
Yes,
movie for
exactly.
real.
That really does tie well into Sharon's quote that quiet lives can leave mighty echoes, and that it does not have to be huge, big, grand actions. It can be the smallest of things that can change everything. It can be offering kindness where previously we offered distrust. It could be showing up to say, "Hey, have this one skill and I can volunteer in this way." I think that the other one of the other quotes that she had and that she talks about a lot is, "You might as well and go ahead and have the audacity." If you're a little bit afraid of what might happen if you step forward, might as well have the audacity. That so much of history is made up of people who had the audacity to act, who had the audacity to do something even when people told them they couldn't. I This is a small comparative story, but Angela has shared a story before about she one time as a child chased down a baby deer and caught it. And when she brought the baby deer back home and was like, "I'm going to have this pet," her mom at the time told her, "You can't chase down a deer and catch it. That's not possible." Says this to her while she's holding a deer. Like, "You can't do that thing that you just did." And she's like, "Well, I did." There's so much of
I
life
didn't
that
know you couldn't. No one told me you couldn't.
no one told you that you couldn't, so you just did it. And that right there, like, there is so much that when somebody tells you you can't do something, sometimes we just go, "Oh, okay, I can't do that. That's fine. I accept that to be fact." If so there's 2 parts of this. Number 1, if no one's telling you you can't do it, go do the thing, okay? Number 2, even if someone is telling you you can't do it, you probably could still do it if you wanted to. Angela literally chased down a baby deer in the woods and caught it, okay? That's
You know what,
crazy.
how I did it? I kept going and 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 kept going. It just didn't
And you
stop.
you
It
wore
just didn't
out the
stop.
problem
I did.
and eventually you got your
Yeah.
break.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I do not think of that story very often as an enlightenment to you nobody told you that you couldn't. But it kind thanks, Sammy. I wanna receive that.
I'm so glad. I also think that it's just so I don't know. I don't have a good I just feel in awe, but I don't feel like this is
Well, I
coming
want to
off
tell.
well.
That's okay. Um,
I like how we're
and
like, "Okay, hold on, let's pause." Like,
no, no, no.
lovely moment. Will
Well,
you say I
so
received that?
mhm.
Okay.
I don't often tell that story as a way to demonstrate like perseverance because I just did the thing, right? I didn't even think about that I should do something that I should even, I don't even acknowledge that that is a great story for. So I'm going to receive you seeing me. And also I'm going to celebrate that seed got planted in me young. I was 14 when that happened. And so that seed was already there. And I'm just grateful that I've been able to fertilize it and water it and you just keep going. And it also, those of you that know me that are baffled so many times, and especially if you work with me, when I'm like, well, we just do it. And they're like, no, 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 that's just not possible. And I'm like, why not? Because you just do it. Anyway, so thank you. I received that. I want to tell a story about one person that made the difference that didn't make Sharon's book because as we talked about in our bonus episode, I am part of the League of Women Voters. And so for the last couple of years, I've been on the board, and really it has brought things to my attention. And so a few years ago, I got to be in Nashville, and it was actually around the time of um, the anniversary of it was an anniversary of the sorry.
19th Amendment?
No, I was going to say that it just got choked up for a second. Sorry.
Oh.
So there was a sorry. So a few years ago, I got to be in Nashville, and they had at the Tennessee State Museum, they had a 100th anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment. Now it was passed in 1920, but because of COVID, then they had extended this exhibit. I was there in 21, and I heard for the first time this story, but literally the 19th Amendment to pass women's suffrage, it passed at Congress, and it had to pass 75% of the states. And the states that hadn't passed it yet, none of the governors were willing to put it in front of the legislature except Tennessee. And Tennessee put it in front of the legislature and it got tie. And they put it in front of the legislature and it got a tie. And it was like, this is coming the third. It was like, if this doesn't pass, this is going to just I think the legislature was going to break for the fall and it was just going to die. Right. And this guy, Harry Byrne, I want to somebody should make a Broadway musical about Harry Byrne because Harry Byrne got a letter from his mom the day before this vote. And she is, giving him like, here's what's going on back at the farm, praying for you. You might help Mrs. Caddy with her problem. Okay. Uh, she was one of the people that was leading the women's suffrage amendment or leading the effort for women's suffrage at the time. And he said, my mom has a master's degree in international studies. She's traveled the world and she is not allowed to vote. But the sharecroppers who didn't even finish high school because he's a man, he is allowed to vote. That feels wrong to me. And that day, Harry Byrne voted, and he was the deciding vote to break the tie so that Tennessee ratified the 19th Amendment. And you're just like, literally one person. Now, I will tell you, disturbingly at the time, the Christian Women's Alliance sought to remove Harry from Congress or from his seat in the legislature, and they went after everybody that had voted for this, which is disturbing on so many levels to me. But I still want to celebrate Harry Byrne because it really can be one person. So as we are rolling into this election and people go, what does it matter? And, there's all the electoral college. I'm not in a swing state, but local elections matter, right? Like who your mayor is, who your county justice of the peace and whatever it is in your county, whatever state you live in, the people that are in the Arkansas legislature or in whatever legislative body that you are in for your state, all of those things matter almost more on our day-to-day lives than who gets in the White House. And so I just want to say that, like, for people that are like, my vote doesn't matter, my efforts won't matter, standing out and encouraging people, giving somebody a ride to get to do their votes, none of that matters. I just want to say, man, Harry Burns says that is not true.
I would like to I would like to yes and you. One person, sure, made the difference. But do you want to know what made the difference for Harry? Harry's mom. Do you
Yep.
want to know what made the difference for Harry's mom? Somebody talking to her. Do you
Yep.
want to know what made the difference for that? Somebody talking to them. And so while yes, one person was the final straw that tipped the scale, it took a lot of straws and the collective action that the person who told Harry's mom probably didn't even realize that they contributed to the final push to make this happen.
Right, because it was 70 years we fought for the right to vote.
That's what gives me the goosebumps, is the
Yeah.
ripple effect that you may never even know. So even if you go do your one action, you show up to volunteer one time, you offer a kindness to somebody and a soft smile and a sweet word, you have no idea the ripple effect that that could have on everything. Your singular actions change the world. And I know we sound like a bunch of just like romantic, like I'm romanticizing this whole thing, but it really does make a difference. And I think that when you lose that hope and when you lose that perspective and you think what I'm doing doesn't matter, that's a heavy place to be at. And even if you feel hopeless, what you do still matters. And that's okay to hold precious, the little baby bird of hope in your heart, treat it gently and say, I'm just going to go do one thing. I'm going to go do what I can with what I have in front of me when my moment arises.
Well, and I want to remind you, one of the things that I love that Sharon said is hope is not a feeling.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, it generates some warm feelings and we all get some warm sensations when we feel hope, but hope is an action. It's kind of like love. Love is not a feeling, love is an action. Like, we take action. It does generate sensations for us, right? It generates joy, it generates some things like that, peace. But hope is a choice. And so we get to choose, what do we focus on? We get to choose, are we, even in your hopelessness, you can feel it, experience it, and then make the choice to not let that control you and make the choice to choose that baby bird of hope and to cultivate it and to feed it and to let it grow up and let it soar, because it does matter.
Mm. I feel like this is as good a spot as any to end and to hopefully leave you guys with just that uplifting encouragement that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, your actions matter. Your decisions matter. The impact and influence that you have matters. Treat that with the care and the respect that it deserves and go be freaking awesome with it. Oh, just so exciting. Thank you guys so much for listening. And thank you so much for letting us just geek out about our experience at Sharon's book tour. We got to have an amazing time meeting people. We got to have a great experience with Jimmy Rock, Sharon's personal DJ. No, it's not her personal DJ. The DJ she's partnered with for the tour, who's really, really fantastic. You can go check him out on Instagram as well at Jimmy Rock. And go buy her book. If you just want a little bit of encouragement that your small and mighty actions could make a difference, Don't just listen to us for 30 minutes. Go read her book and really dig in to see. We're not the only ones saying this. We are the ones trying to amplify and spread this message that what you do matters. Thank you guys so much for listening today. We hope you guys go be freaking awesome.